Hey there. So in this second part of the modding tutorials series, I'm going to show you how you can change up some of the values for different heroes and units' weapons, and how you can even go about finding some of these things. And I also want to show you a bit about how to find what it means for like different damage types, different armor sets, things that are directly correlated to one another about the kind of damage that they take and how to read uh, how much damage they're actually taking depending on their damage types. So there's a little bit to go over here, but it's not too much. All right, so in the last episode, I taught you how you can uh, actually read some of this stuff, how you can pull it up, what programs to use, and all that. So if you don't know any of that in this episode coming in fresh, I have a whole episode before this for people like you. So go check it out. All right, so in the end of the last episode, I had mentioned about how certain weapons or certain kinds of damage from different heroes and units, they can be a little hard to read. I had mentioned something about how if you look at their damage type, like here, I've got Faramir pulled up, their damage in the game data uh, page, or excuse me, the gamedata.ini file, that it can read a certain value, but it may or may not be entirely accurate. But I didn't exactly go into detail about how or why that might be. Well, there's a couple of things you need to keep into consideration here when you're doing this. When you're dealing with the vanilla files, vanilla ROTWK, or even vanilla BFME2, they're usually pretty straightforward. When it comes to this sort of thing, just unit damage itself, it's usually pretty straightforward. But if you're going into like a mod like the Age of the Ring mod, or maybe even the Edain mod, this might not be so straightforward. It shows it under the specific hero here, of course. So you think, well, I should just be able to find everything I need down there. Well, no, not necessarily. In those mods, they can take and choose as they please, just depending on what they want to use for the individual heroes or units. It's much more convenient for them to be able to just say that they want to use, say, Faramir damage, but if they have a totally different hero altogether, um, like maybe a whole different hero from a different faction. I've seen this happen a couple of times in my own moderate usage of modding here, but like I said, in vanilla, it's usually not that case. So I'm going to show you here how you can actually find it reliably if you're using that. And it's better to just cross-reference these things anyways, just in case. So even in the vanilla game, it's always better to have an additional reference handy. And I'm going to show that to you right now. So what you want to do is when you go over to look up a unit, so remember over in the FinalBIG, you got to go down, you got to find your specific unit that you want. And in this case, I've got Faramir, and I got him pulled up here. Now, when you want to look up the very specific kind of weapons and weapon damage that he uses, you want to look up weapon set. Okay? Weapon set right here. And depending on the unit or the hero or whatever, you might find more than one weapon set. So in this case, we got Faramir bow, and you got Faramir sword, and so forth. And down here, you'll also see armor set. And I'll get to that here in a little bit with hero armor. All right, but anyways, so Faramir bow. Now, this is what it says he's using. It's not going to give you a damage type, of course, or damage values or anything like that. So what you want to do, you want to copy and paste that, and you go over here, scroll all the way down, and you're going to go down to weapon. Weapon.ini. I got that pulled up as well. And you're going to input that into weapon.ini. Now in this case, I've got Faramir sword, so hold on here. Faramir bow. All right. Now, Faramir bow, you got a whole long list of things. What you're mostly going to want to look at right now is its Faramir bow warhead right here. Okay, this is the kind of damage that it's going to do. All right. Now to find that, it's usually right underneath wherever it says, unit bow or hero bow. Of course, you could always just put that into the search bar. And as luck would have it, we do have Faramir bow warhead right here. Okay. Now, damage type, or excuse me, damage is Faramir bow damage. Okay. Obviously, with those big caps there, you're going to want to look over into game data again. So let's copy. We're going to paste that over there in game data. Faramir bow damage. And it is right here. So 150. All right. So, like I said, it's very straightforward here in vanilla, but that's not always the case. So you always want to make sure that you're going over to weapon.ini and looking at the very specific terminology used. And going back over to Faramir bow, or excuse me, sword. You can see Faramir damage here under damage. And that also is the same over here. But like I said, once in a while you're going to find in a mod, it'll say something like Baragond damage for, Faramir sword or some mix like that. You'll see a mix up. All right, now, and in terms of what I was showing you earlier about armor sets. So armor sets are interesting. You'll see different types of armor. Hero armor here, or hero armor mounted. And these have different values entirely. And to find these, you just go up to the very top of your ini.big file. You go up to armor.ini. I've already got it open. Okay. At the very top of this file, you're going to see a whole slew of different types of armor. And that's going to correlate directly to the different types of damage that's done. So these are usually pretty straightforward. The most important ones you got to worry about, though, are here. Crush, slash, pierce, siege, structural. Okay, these are the ones that'll crop up the most, that you'll most likely want to change the most if you want to mod this stuff. What might not be so obvious about this, so slash is your sword damage. It's coming from like your melee fighters. Pierce is your arrow damage, obviously from archers. Siege is from all of your ranged siege units like trebuchets. Structural damage now, that's a different one. I'm not entirely as familiar with that one as with the rest of them. Structural armor, that's for all of your different, your buildings, your base buildings and all of that. Force, I don't know what that is. But crush, that's for when you go to trample. There's a whole different value for crushing units with your cavalry and all of that. And of course, these are pretty straightforward here. Frost, flame. The hero range, that's for hero damage. So Faramir has a bow. He's going to have a specific ranged damage that's different from his pierce damage. He will not have pierce damage. He will have hero ranged damage. Pierce is usually reserved for just your normal non-heroic units. And then logical fire, that's terrain fire. So if your ground around your units lights on fire, this is the kind of damage that's done to them. And you'll see in armor set sometimes their logical fire armor damage or armor values. And of course, cavalry ranged. You got your ranged cavalry that do different damage than your normal ground archers for Pierce. And then specialist damage. Specialist is pikeman damage, as you can see right here. Doesn't give a definition for all of them, but right at the bottom here are your most important ones, if you're ever confused. Okay, so scrolling down here, you'll see that there's different armor types. Not every unit has its own individual armor type. Porters are obviously a little bit different than most units, but most units will have an individual, well, not individual, but a stock kind of armor type. So, for instance, a lot of heroes are going to have this hero armor, and you see all these different values. Now, when you see certain values that say like 100%, what this means is this is the amount of damage that those units can take from this specific kind of damage. So in the case of like if a hero has hero light armor and he's getting damaged from a magic attack, let's say a fireball or something, he will take 100% of that damage. So obviously lower numbers are what you would really want. They would be much more resistant to those damage types. So, you know, if he's going to get hit by cavalry, he's only going to take 60% of that damage as opposed to the 100% of the magic damage, and so forth. Now, where this comes in with your, let's see, with what I was showing you earlier about damage types. Let me see if I can find it now. Sorry. Faramir damage. No, there's this. Here's the damage type. Okay. Faramir's sword, his sword will do this type of damage. Now we already saw what the value of that damage was over in game data here. He does 200 hero damage. Okay, now obviously what that's going to mean is like if he hits another hero, then he would have to resist with this. He would have to resist that kind of damage, okay? This is going to be a different value, obviously, from like if the unit would have slash damage. So obviously he's going to be much more resistant to your default fighter hordes, your swordsman hordes, than he would be the hero that's fighting him. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Armor sets, and weapon sets, and all of that. If you have any questions, any concerns, or anything like that, just shoot me a message. As I said in the first video, I'm no modding professional. I haven't done this like a super large amount. You know, I've done it for a couple of years, but just real light kind of stuff. You know, I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of how to make a whole mod like Age of the Ring or anything like that. But I know a couple of things here and there. So just shoot me a message if you have any interesting questions or concerns. Maybe I might be able to know the answer or help you out. And if not, I can always try to point you to a great resource, which would be T3A. T3A is a great resource that you can find on Discord. Just type in T3A there, or you can go to the thirdage.net for a great, a whole slew, of tutorials, just hundreds of tutorials, and I covered that a little bit in my first video as well. So, all right, that's about it. Thanks.